18 minutes past 7 is
I thought you'd be more impressed with that than you were, I must confess.
Well, I am impressed that it actually happened on this very same day that she's talking about it.
Because there's also footage of it, isn't there? There's footage of the woman kind of wandering out and the immediate aftermath, very jerky black and white footage.
Well, if we're talking about serious injuries and also deaths and pedestrian deaths specifically, because 3 of the 10 most dangerous pedestrian crossings in the country, right here in London on Oxford Street, new statistics from the Department of Transport showing that the junctions of Oxford Street and Holles Street, Davis Street and Duke Street have seen 45 people seriously injured by traffic. Well, Tom Kearney spent 2 weeks in a coma in 2009 after being hit by a bus on Oxford Street. He now runs the Safer Oxford Street campaign. Joins us now. Good morning to you, Tom.
Good morning, Pam.
So this was in 2009 and you were crossing the Oxford Street at the time.
No, I was on the curb, actually.
You were on the curb, and then what happened?
Well, the mirror's over. It was a bendy bus going about at least 20 miles an hour through a signal crossing, and I've never been in a collision in my life. I've driven in South Africa and Russia and everything. And, the mirrors overhang the curb. It happens quite often, at least 4 times a month, according to details Darren Johnson found out.
What, that you were clipped by the mirror?
Yeah, it happens all the time.
And we said you were in a coma for 2 weeks. Do you remember the accident happening, or did that memory come back to you after a while?
I prefer to use the word collision, not accident. Accident's an act of God, just being specific here. Do I remember, being hit?
Do you remember the accident? Often people say when they've been in a coma, they don't remember the incident
that
led to them being in a coma.
I do remember being in a coma, thank you, but that's a totally different conversation.
Okay.
So what would you like to see on Oxford Street? So we're talking about zebra crossings and just pedestrian crossings in general, but what would you like to see on Oxford Street?
I mean, I come from the mining industry. I've been a director of a mine in South Africa, and one thing you know from being in the mining industry is that heavy machines and lots of people don't mix. So you run a program that actually tries to keep heavy machines away from people. Now, Oxford Street, for historical reasons and reasons we'll get into, is obviously London's high street. It's also TfL's major thoroughfare. It's as if basically TfL decided to build, Heathrow Terminal or Runway 3 through all the terminals at Heathrow. 200 million people a year, with hundreds, or at least 50 million, probably hundreds of million, coming more when Crossrail shows up. So you've got so many people, and you've got lots of machines, very big machines, 15-ton vehicles, 300 of them an hour. And Westminster, in its wisdom, allows the street to be a speed limit of 30 miles per hour.
Although, of course, it's very rare that I think traffic moves at that speed. Doesn't mean it's the right to have it at that level. The other thing is, of course, over the years, and I'm old enough to remember when all vehicles were allowed up and down Oxford Street. At least they've tried, I suppose, to filter out some of them. Do you think now is the time, then, Tom, to completely pedestrianise Oxford Street?
I think you've got so many people. Yes, period, yes. And I think that's really the only way to go, and I think it will happen. I think it's inevitable. The question is not will it happen? It's going to happen. So how do we get there with the least amount of disruption?
Thank you for joining us. That was Tom Kearney there, who spent 2 weeks in a coma, which he'd rather not talk about, back in 2009 after being hit by a bus on Oxford Street.